Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Old King Thor. Coming from Earth 14412, Old King Thor refers to himself as an older version of our Earth 616 Thor. So much so that if our Earth's Thor dies, he will also not exist anymore at all. Love it. We love future stress. Making his debut in Thor God of Thunder issue 1 in 2012, and this version is a creator version of the god. It's fun. In the future, Thor becomes a bit hasty. It shows a lot of his true potential, especially when he creates humans for this new Earth named Steve and Jane. Classic human names. After defeating Gore, he and his granddaughters began to rebuild this new world, starting with plant life. I feel like we're gearing up to see King Thor in the MCU. I mean, the eye patch, his weight gain, this emotional trauma, he really seems like he's going through it lately. King Thor also possesses the power of the Odin Force, which is also known as the power of the Allfather, and when wielded by Thor, of course, is called the Thor Force, or the Force. It doesn't work. We give it a shot, we try our best. This power allows Thor to become invincible and seems to allow them to rival the powers of the strongest beings in the universe. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal. Here's the kicker though, if it's overused, it forces the user to enter a deep sleep to recover, and of course, making them vulnerable while doing so. I feel like this can be the plot for Thor Love and Thunder. I mean, maybe Thor has to use this power right off the hop of the film, then he enters a deep sleep, and then bam, that's where Jane Foster comes in to protect the Sleeping Beauty himself. There you go. And before we make our way to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be just splendid, because it goes a long way for us here at the studio. You guys rock. Thank you. Now back to some more God stuff. Number 9, Zombie Thor. We all know Chris Hemsworth's diet is insane in order to maintain the God of Thunder's physique. He has like 15 abs. I'm sure it's not easy, but when it comes to appetite, Marvel's Zombies doesn't hold back. Making his nasty debut in Marvel Zombies Army of Darkness in issue 1, it was a brief appearance, as you expect with the city plagued by a zombie contagion. And as far as the Hammer's commitment goes, once Ultimate Reed Richards enters the chat, Thor couldn't wield Mjolnir anymore, so instead he makes a makeshift hammer, this one made of a pipe and a cinder block. Nice. It didn't last long though because, Silver Surfer's face kind of got in the way. Ouch. Number 8, Thor. Thor, but with an extra R, a little extra spice in this one, that's for sure. So Thor, this is the evil Thor of Earth 83292. So he's a bit of a dick this time around. Fair. He kills people if he believes that they don't worship him enough. I mean, a little much. Thor. We'll do Thor's Day from now on. Is that fine? What if we do that? Is that cool? This version is pretty dark, but I'm a fan. I mean, he really loves pies. Check it out. His journey begins in Avengers Volume 5, Issue 25. Like I said, this version's evil. He's a villain, but I have to throw him on this list because he's too badass to ignore. Sorry, not sorry. Venom Thor. Okay, this next one is absolutely insane, as you would imagine. We would stand no chance against this one. Earth 1089 is home to Venom Thor, and he made his debut back in What If Volume 2, Issue 4. Issue Thor? Issue 4. I see you, Marvel. So after killing its previous host, of course Spider-Man, the Venom symbiote made its way to Thor. Very scary. It didn't last long. Thank you, God it didn't last long. Well, rather thanks to Black Bolt for intervening. That would have been messy. The symbiote with the hammer and cape, I mean, I gotta tell you, something about it I like. I don't know. He even has the flow too, the Venom flow. It looks wet, it looks nice, it looks ready to go. Venom Thor is real mighty with a hint of fright. He takes care of Johnny Storm, bam, super quick, and then when Captain Marvel attempts to level him, the hammer just absorbs her power and shoots her back away. If only Black Bolt didn't get in the way, it probably would have been a pretty spectacular light show. Gory, but spectacular nonetheless. Throg. The Frog of Thunder. Why, of course, everyone knows him. Simon Walterson made his comic book debut in Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers issue 1, and this version is quite noteworthy. He started off the usual way a Frog of Thunder starts, a college football star at Mississippi State University. Maybe it doesn't start all the same, I don't know. After being drafted, of course, a knee injury left him unable to play anymore. Classic. And as if things couldn't get worse, he lost his wife, and then after battling depression, decided to take his pain to a witch, who connected him to the afterlife. He was able to communicate with his wife, how sweet. And then he wasn't able to pay the witch afterwards, which is not that sweet. Dine and dash on a witch? Dude, you're crazy. So the witch decides to get a little payback and turns Simon into a frog. He was soon given the name Puddle Gulp after meeting the other frogs on New York. Also, no, I'm not joking, this is all real. He comes across a small piece of Mjolnir, and then there you have it. The Frog of Thunder has risen. If you haven't seen any of Throg, it's quite riveting. I mean, riveting. Is that a Witchneer? Huh? Ultimate Thor. Starting with Ultimates issue 4, we see the Earth 1610 version begin his life on Earth in a not so pleasant way. So while exiled on Earth, he really did believe he was human. More specifically, a psychiatric nurse named Thorleif Gullman. Honestly, I feel like that name is more badass than Thor Odinson. It's kinda close. So around his 30th birthday, Thorleif began having these delusions of this Asgard place. And then he soon met his half-brother Gunnar. He introduced him to a project called the Dome. So basically in Brussels, they were trying to recreate this super soldier serum yet again, but this time they went with a magic belt of sorts. So instead of trying the whole biomechanical route, you know? The test subject, of course, being Thorleif Gullman. Gullman and Sachs, can't include that. So he was given this badass Thor outfit, and the look was finally complete. He started these rants up again, how he was the Norse god of thunder. And after a neat MRI scan from Professor James Braddock, it was discovered that Thor wasn't making any of this up. These were memories. Their memories are real. I like this version of Thor. He doesn't agree to join the Ultimates after Fury asks until the foreign aid budget was doubled. My man negotiating. We'd love to see it. Also, Thor's magic belt was mentioned in Spider-Man Homecoming. Could this be a hint that we're gonna get some sort of crazy Thor outfit in the future? Yeah, probably. They like to do that. Third. If you're a dog person, this next one is gonna make your day, as it made mine. Thor making his first appearance, or occurrence, nah, it's cats, damn it, in Peter Porker, The Spectacular Spider-Ham issue 5. Thor is by far the cutest version of Thor. Sorry Hemsworth, you're a close second. Making his home on Arfgard, of course, he's the dog of thunder instead of god of thunder. Yeah, we reversed the word. See what I did? Yeah, you got it. What's a super dog without a super pack? When it came time to taking down Dr. Octopus of Earth 50810, Thor joined the other Scavengers. Yeah, see, now you know what we're doing here. You know what it's all about. He was joined by the oh-so-loving Captain Americat, Quacksilver, and Ant. Cool. Look, we got Spider-Ham John Mulaney edition, so to say we'll see Thor on the big screen, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. We're not gonna see it, that's for sure. I'll make it myself if I have to. Let's go. It's only a matter of time. I believe. Jane Foster. I'm super excited that Taika Waititi is returning for Thor Love and Thunder. Thor Ragnarok was one of the most fun Marvel movies that they put out there, easy, hands down. So when they announced that Natalie Portman was returning to wield the hammer in the upcoming sequel, I was jazzed. I'm so excited to see what they do with this. I mean, once Thor becomes unworthy, Jane takes over. I mean, she's pretty close to him. She's probably got the swing down at this point, right? The tough part about her is that the more she uses the hammer and possess the powers of Thor, the worse her cancer gets. I really hope this part doesn't make it into the flick, because I feel like I would just come out depressed. So during the comic Original Sin, Nick Fury obtains the Watcher's Eye, which is a real neat tool. And he whispers in Thor's ear that Gore was right. Gore was right, by the way. So Gore, this guy, he thinks that gods cause more trouble than anything, and they're like the worst ever. It makes Thor drop his hammer, seeing as he believes that gods are not worthy. And then he's like, by the way, he's right, y'all ain't worthy. Oops. So while Thor uses Yarngord instead, which is awesome name for anything, Mjolnir needs a new helping hand, literally, and who other is worthy than Jane Foster. Now while the cancer setback is absolutely awful, Jane doesn't let it interfere with her duty, and at one point her and Freya go against Odin, Cole Borson, Frost Giants, Loki, Dark Elves. Like, she doesn't just pick up the hammer, use it a little bit, and then gets on her way. No, she's committed. Committed to the bit. Storm Thor. From Earth 904, we find in the What If the X-Men Had Stayed in Asgard series, this beautiful combination of Storm and Thor. Storm. Yeah, I'll always try. And let me tell you, there's a lot of lightning in this one. So after a few X-Men decide to stay on Asgard, Thor at this point is still trapped as a frog back on Earth. Classic Loki, making people frogs. Loki actually created another mythical hammer and gave it to Storm. Now, she did a pretty bang-up job, considering that when Thor returned, he let her become the queen of Asgard. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. Her powers alone, before getting a magical hammer, she should be running the show regardless. Let's go. And finally, number 1, Beta Ray Bill. I really think we'll get to see this one on the big screen very, very soon. It's been teased numerous times now, but who is Beta Ray Bill exactly? Why is he always the talk of the town? The main 616 universe is home to the Corbinites, and amongst them is the powerful Beta Ray Bill. Making his first appearance back in 1983 in Thor issue 337, this version of Thor is recognized widely by his hammer, and that it's actually Stormbreaker, which we finally got to see in Infinity War for the first time. It was epic, the whole arm thing with Groot. So good. I stood up. I literally stood up. Bill was the first character to lift Mjolnir besides Thor or Odin. He's a big deal. Odin actually made Thor and Beta Ray Bill fight, and after Beta Ray Bill won, he refused to kill Thor. Questioning Odin and the rules of the hammer, he asked if he can use the hammer later on in life, you know, after he's gained wisdom and all that nice stuff. So Odin gives him his own hammer, Stormbreaker. Not a bad gift. This guy is awesome. He's a total badass. Christian Bale is rumored to play him in the MCU, so he kind of has to be a little bit of a badass, you know? If there's a Beta Ray, is there an Alpha Ray? Yes. He actually tried to replace him at one point as the race's guardian. He is in the main continuity of Thor, so to not see him in any movies at this point is just annoying. Kicking off the list at number 10. Ghost Spider. Coming from Earth 11638, aka the perfect world. Okay. This Peter Parker has a much brighter beginning, meaning Uncle Ben never actually passed away and gave the whole great responsibility speech. Instead, he encourages Peter to become a stronger Spider-Man, which sounds good on paper. It sounds like the ideal world. But does he recommend protein shakes and proper exercise and nutrition? No. See, Uncle Ben pushes Peter to abduct Spider-Man from other worlds and then absorb their life force via this portal that Parker Technologies created. So he's a bit of a dick, this Uncle Ben. He's not really the nicest guy. Maybe he's fine, I don't know. This whole system seems a little bit whack. Now eventually Earth 616 Spider-Man shows up. They both hear about each other. It's interesting because Uncle Ben poisons our Peter and then he wakes up confused and they fight it out and our Peter Parker comes out on top, luckily, with the perfect amazing spider getting his soul sucked into that machine. Now the perfect Spider-Man spirit was then trapped in the underworld like hell, and then from here it only gets more strange. Well, rather it gets more Banner. See, Banner was the current Sorcerer Supreme at this time, so he ended up freeing Peter in his astral form, but then Peter absorbed all those spirits of the damned while he was down there, so when he came back up, this perfect spider was now Ghost Spider. Number 9, Old Man Spider. Ezekiel Sims from Earth 4, aka Old Man Spider, took over the web-slinging spot after Peter Parker lost his life to Morlun. Now, Ezekiel first appeared in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 5. He was actually recruited by Spider UK, who I'll talk about a little bit later, to go against Morlun and the Inheritors. Now, Ezekiel rescued Ben Reilly and Kane from the Inheritors, which is awesome, and then a bunch of other spider beings were then recruited, but Deimos tracked them down and snapped this Spider-Man's neck. He caught him off guard. Brutal. And in his last words, he revealed his true self and told Peter to protect Silk, aka the bride. All that matters. What a beautiful last sentence. We love impactful last words here at Top 10 Nerd. It's the best. And you know what else we like? We like when you like our videos. Literally, go and give this video a thumbs up and it will do wonders for our channel. We're trying our best, so you know, all we ask is for a little click. Maybe subscribe, maybe like, maybe notifications if you're feeling good. I don't know. Let's get back to the list. Number 8, Spider UK. Here he is, Billy Braddock himself. I told you I'd talk about him. He began his life as Captain Britain, actually, before he was webbing people up. So he's actually rocking both teams. He's a busy guy. He's on the Captain Britain team and then the Spider Armies. He made his first appearance in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 2 over on Earth 833. Now, this Spider-Man is one of my favorite versions. His arc is so fun. He can hop between dimensions whenever he chooses, and then after the defeat of the Inheritors, spoilers, he keeps an eye on Earth 3145, and then during the Spider-Geddon storyline, in issue 2, Spider UK dies in an explosion and is buried in England on Earth 803, the home of Lady Spider, who loved the idea of Spider UK being buried in the same cemetery as her parents because she loved him like a brother, of course. Brother zoned even after death. He's down there like, really? Okay. That's a good one. Number 7, Spider-Man. Literally, this gets a little gross. Now imagine if Spider-Man had more spider than man when he was bit. That's what happened to Patton Parnell when he first entered comics in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 4. See, Patton lived a pretty dark life. He lived with an abusive Uncle Ted. He would perform horrible experiments on animals, and he spied on his neighbor Sarah Jane. So it's not a healthy system that he's got going on here in any way, really. One day, Sarah Jane and Patton went to Alcorp Industries in hopes of freeing all these test animals, but that's when Patton saw this red radioactive spider. He was like, I want to touch it. And then he did, got bit, and then got kicked out. Now, overnight, he didn't get jacked. His vision didn't get better. He wasn't webbing up Dr. Peppers and lamps. When he got his abilities, he started eating everything. He ate a mouse, and then he ate a cat, and then when Uncle Ted walked in, he was like, what's up? Now, this version is, of course, extremely powerful, but he's also extremely dark. We love the balance. We love balance. Number 6, Spider Cyborg. Coming from Earth 2818, this version is a dark future Spider-Man. I mean, look at him, of course. course, there's some sort of future-ness going on here. He made his first debut in Superior Spider-Man issue 33. Now, it's Peter Parker if he got cybernetic additions. It's badass. That's basically all it is. His one eye can zoom in, go all tactical. The claws can certainly leave a mark. And one of the most remarkable features, his arm cannon, his sonic arm cannon, that's definitely a plus. Now, before Karn came to Earth 2818, our Superior Spider-Man warned him, and then when Kane finally did show up, Superior Spider-Man and some other webbed friends joined the battle. His left eye being a red lens is actually a nod to his appearance early on in the 90s in Spider-Man issue 21, titled Dealing Arms. Number 5, the Scarlet Spider. Ben Reilly first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man issue 149 as a clone. He was part of the whole clone thing that went on for way too long. But it wasn't until Spider-Man issue 5 that he was introduced to readers as the Scarlet Spider. Now, the Jackal created the clone using Peter's DNA, and he was made to fight Peter, of course. He's like, hey, if you can't beat him, just clone him. Now, the two were fighting it out in order to save Ned from a bomb, and then when the clone seemingly died, he was soon buried after. But the thing is, the Jackal injected him with something earlier so he could survive something like this. Of course. So for the next 5 years, he thought of himself as the useless clone that came back to life, then gave himself the name Ben Reilly. So depressed. Perhaps one of the better elements to come from the Clone Saga was Ben Reilly. One of the few things. Number 4, Spider-Man 2099. Ah yes, the not so near future. 2099 Spider-Man, aka Miguel O'Hara, is the current web slinger over there, and his outfit is one of the more memorable ones. His DNA was biologically mixed with a spider's DNA, so it's a little bit different than our spider bite scenario that we have. Now, he worked at Alchemex and was pressured by the company to test genetic coding, and after Mr. Sims didn't make one of those test runs, just went horrible, Miguel was then poisoned by Tyler Stone with a fatal drug named Rapture, so Miguel ended up relying on the drug so much that he couldn't quit his job. How brutal is that? It's like every McDonald's employee. It's like, yeah, you want free nuggets? Yeah, sign in tomorrow. You're not going anywhere. So Miguel ended up relying on the drug so much that he tried to genetically fix himself and fix his body. Now, of course, this had a brighter turnout than expected, but Miguel inherited Spider-Man abilities plus telepathy. Must be nice. Number 3, the Spider. Earth 15 Spider-Man, simply referred to as the Spider, comes into comics during the Exile storyline issue 12. Now, he was another Cletus Cassidy pretty much. I mean, he was a red-haired psycho who had no problem taking out innocent people, so when the Spider symbiote came along in this Earth, it merged with evil Peter, who was sentenced to not 1, not 2, but 67 life sentences from a jury. Okay, so he's bad. He was a big part of the Weapon X team, and he had Deadpool's sense of humor too, which made him just that much more evil. Now, in Exiles issue 44, he was finally stopped by Firestar when she hit him with a mega blast. He was later buried in the prison cemetery, so even after death, you're still doing that time. Number 2, Miles Morales. Of course, we gotta talk about him. He made his first appearance in Ultimate Fallout issue 4, just a couple months right before the death of Peter Parker. Now, this is a crazy time because Norman Osborn was just arrested and revealed as the Green Goblin, and while Miles was visiting his Uncle Aaron, an enhanced spider crawled out of Aaron's bag, bit Miles, and Bob's your uncle. You know the rest. Now, he got these amazing Spider-Man abilities, but he could also camouflage himself almost fully invisible. Plus, Venom Blasts will help get the job done, that's for sure. The new PlayStation Spider-Man game is way more fun with these added abilities. Makes it way better, so I had to put him on this list and talk about them. Especially if we're talking about abilities. Hold L1 and just punch someone's chest through the wall, you're like, yeah, this is great. And finally, number 1, Cosmic Spider-Man, aka Captain Universe. This Spider-Man is one of, if not the most powerful alternate version of the web slinger. Cosmic Spider-Man went toe-to-toe with Rune King Thor and came out on top. So if you're not sold now, just get out of here. Actually, don't get out of here. Watch the rest of this video. Don't even say that. Never mind. Cosmic Spider-Man is from Earth 13. He retains the powers of the Enigma Force, and he first appears in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Issue 9. Cosmic Spider-Man can't leave his universe or else he would lose the Enigma Force. That's why the resistance of spider heroes were based in Central Park of Earth 13. They're like, hey, no sweat, we'll come to you, no problem. We don't mind the commute. He meets his demise only a couple issues later, sadly, when the Inheritors were hunting down Spider-Man and their leader Solus drained the Enigma Force from him. But we can find more of him in What If Volume 2, Issue 31, titled What If Spider-Man Had Kept His Cosmic Powers.
Number 10, Rancor. Rancor is the descendant of Wolverine who hails from the Earth of 691. She first appeared in the original Guardians of the Galaxy series in issue number 8. When she was just a teenager, she battled her own father and defeated him by clawing out his heart. Yikes. She then took over the planet Haven and decided to take prisoner the human population of that planet, turning them into her servants against their will. She would cross paths and play villain to the original Guardians of the Galaxy team initially, but they would end up defeating her, this time around at least. Her powers are similar to Wolverine's, being that she is his descendant. descendant. As a ruler, she also has other warriors at hand who are willing to fight for her, although she herself is also a capable and skilled fighter. Number 9. Albert. Albert was an android created to destroy the real Wolverine by Donald Pierce. He came from a kind of wacky time in comics and also worked with LCD, another android who resembled a little girl. Like I said, it was an interesting and strange time. In the end, both LCD and Albert would go rogue, deciding not to complete their mission as they developed their own free will and thought and decided they didn't want to die. In killing Wolverine, they likely would have been forced to self-destruct, which they just were not into. Albert the android has powers very similar to Wolverine, though he doesn't self-heal. But hey, he's an android, so he can be rebuilt or patched up in most cases if he's harmed. He also has the fighting prowess to almost match Wolverine of 616. Almost. And also possesses a genius level intellect. Supposedly. Number 8. Wolverine Earth 811. The Wolverine of Earth 811 is interesting as it has been implied that his powers, while similar to the version of Wolverine from Earth 616, could have actually just been a result of human evolution, with him potentially being a descendant of a small group of ancestors known as the Moon Clan, who hid when the Celestials first arrived at Earth, avoiding any of their genetic experimentation. Despite these potential origins, Wolverine was still considered a mutant when the Sentinels took over, as he hails from the reality of Earth 811. And of course, Earth 811 is the reality of the Days of Future Past. He was the Wolverine to help Magneto rescue Scarlet Witch, but unfortunately she died during that attempt, and Magneto ended up paralyzed from the waist down. Wolverine would go on to join the Resistance and become a leader among them, so he not only brings with him his own abilities, but influence over the resistant forces located on his Earth in his reality. Number 7. Jimmy Hudson. Jimmy is the son of Wolverine from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, though Jimmy wouldn't know he was Wolverine's son until his mutant powers manifested. His powers are similar to his dad's, but Jimmy is also bonded to one of the poisons, a kind of symbiotic alien creature that typically takes over their hosts. However, after their leader died, Jimmy found a way to control his poison. While bonded to his poison, Jimmy also has spider-like abilities and can shapeshift, turning his claws into tensile, goo-like tendrils, or extremely elongated spikes. Whatever he prefers for the day. Number 6. X-24. X-24 was a clone of Logan made to defeat the old man version of him and recapture the clones who had escaped. He was powerful enough to take on both Old Man Logan and Laura Kinney at the same time, and Logan pretty much dies trying to fight him in the end, and X-24 is even then only killed after X-23 is forced to shoot him with an adamantium bullet that Wolverine was actually saving for himself to end his own life. X-24 is one tough dude in this movie. He is a version of Logan whose rage is more tapped into and unleashed. What's more, he was engineered to be comparable to Logan in terms of his power level, but in peak physical condition. Considered to be like Wolverine, but as he was in his prime. Number 5. Gorgon. I always forget that Gorgon was also Wolverine, but him being one of Norman Osborn's dark recruits and carrying the mantle would definitely make him one of the most powerful alternate versions of Wolverine around, because Gorgon is a pretty powerful and deadly guy. Even if, as we learned during the Otherworld tournament in Ten of Swords, he isn't immune to the seduction of rock sirens. Gorgon is a masterful fighter and a powerful mutant who also has the ability to turn his opponents to stone, hence his name. Gorgon. He is a deadly force to be reckoned with, and I personally feel bad for all of the folks who have to challenge him whenever he's working security for the mutants of Krakoa. A lot of those people just are getting maimed left, right, and center. Ugh. Number 4. Daken. Daken, or Akihiro, is a deadly member of the Wolverine family, who spent his time as Wolverine when he was on the Dark Avengers. It was during this time that Daken attempted to take the Muramasa blade for himself to boost his power. He planned on having it bonded to his skeleton and coating his claws in it, and he wanted it so he could basically go kill Romulus. Remember Romulus, everyone? Whatever happened with that? He was successful in bonding the Muramasa blade to his claws, but didn't get to hold on to that power permanently. He would go on to battle and defeat both Scar and the Punisher, in fact seemingly killing Frank Castle, who would then go on to become Franken Castle for a time. One of Daken's most powerful abilities is his pheromone control, which can allow him to alter his opponent's mood. This is actually how he won against Scar, using pheromones to calm Scar down, which caused him to then transform. and transform in a way where he was just more chill. Number 3. Laura Kinney. Despite not even being an exact clone of Logan, X-23 is still one of the most powerful versions of Wolverine around out there. She became Wolverine in the all-new Wolverine series. Even today, it's more the mantle and look that Laura is known for, with both her and Logan currently using the same name, Wolverine, on Krakoa. So there are 2 Wolverines technically within the same continuity now. More recently, Wolverine was chosen to go on a mission inside the vault, along with Darwin and the resurrected Synch. The 3 were brought in to do so because of their extraordinary abilities and the fact that Synch could, in effect, use both of their powers himself. As we saw in issues 18 and 19 of the 2019 X-Men series, time moves differently in the vault. And in the end, the mission ended up taking, for them, hundreds of years before they actually managed to complete it and get out. But despite aging, Laura did not slow down. Even in the old woman Laura future, where her cells were beginning to break down due to her being created originally from genetic engineering, Laura still proved to be a badass, using her last bit of time alive to defeat Doom and free the people of Latveria. Basically all around, X-23 is just like the best. She's so cool. Number 2. Dark Claw. Dark Claw is a combination of Marvel's Wolverine and DC's Batman, hailing from the Amalgam Comics universe. So yeah, you know he's OP. He's not only got a powerful regenerative healing factor, but is a master fighter, martial artist, and detective who also happens to have super enhanced senses. Imagine a master detective who is also a master tracker. There is no crime or mystery that he could not solve. Dark Claw is also known for being hyper intelligent besides, so he's basically got the whole package. He's also super wealthy in this reality as well, so he's got money to back up his vigilante antics, helping him to acquire high level tech and giving him access to various different gadgets, as well as his own Clawcopter, which this character has in place of a Batmobile. If you're both Wolverine and Batman, does that mean you just have like unlimited plot armor? Because I feel like both of those characters can never die just because they're so popular, so I feel like Dark Claw would be pretty unstoppable. Number 1. Old Man Phoenix. Obviously, one of the most powerful versions of Wolverine around has to be the one from the alternate future of King Thor, Earth 14412. Here, Wolverine goes on to become the Phoenix after seemingly dying along with everyone else on Earth at the hands of Loki. The Phoenix, however, chose him, and because of that, he lived again and was given an unimaginable amount of cosmic power. Logan mostly used this power to fend off villains, including Ultron and Loki, and to keep the Space Stone out of Loki's hands. Many years later, as Old Man Phoenix, he would team up with King Thor to protect the Earth from Dr. Doom, after it was given new life again. Doom in this reality was also immensely powerful, and although Logan could not be killed in battle, he chose to sacrifice himself to give Thor the power to defeat Doom, imbuing his hammer Mjolnir with the Phoenix Force. However, even after seemingly giving up his life here, he would still somehow end up being resurrected. Because Phoenix.
Number 10. 1602 Spider-Man. In part 1 of this list, we mentioned Spider-Man 2099, so for part 2 we had to wind it back a little bit. Peter Parquois, fancy name, first appeared in Marvel 1602 issue 1, but it wasn't until a couple years later in New World issue 4 where he was introduced as the Spider. Peter Parquois didn't have any powers per se, but he still got the job done for Fury. Sorry, Royal Spy Master Nicholas Fury, that is. Now, I love this version of Pete quite a bit because there's these odd looking spiders that you're expecting that are going to bite him, and then he's going to turn into the webhead, but it just doesn't happen. It gets so close, and then he's like, I'm a normal guy. It's great, it teases you, so fun. So this Spider-Man is, yes, of course, a little bit weaker than our 616 webhead, but I'll give him bonus points because of the ruffles. And also, no goggles either. This dude's eyes must be so dry. Number 9, Spider-Man Noir. Bumping the clocks ahead to the year 1933, the Great Depression doesn't seem like an appropriate time to do backflips and webbing people up, but the 2008 4-part miniseries finds one of the coolest versions of Peter Parker for sure. Nicolas Cage voiced this version of Spidey in Sony's Spider-Verse film, and I gotta say, they kind of nailed it. His origins are more or less the same. Norman Osborn is a shady mayor this time around, and the way Spider-Man fights crime is so extra, I gotta admit. When I read Noir, I always read Spider-Man's voice in the same voice as like Jackie Earle Haley's Rorschach. I don't know, it's so fitting and smoky, it's definitely a vibe, that's for sure. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be extremely helpful for our channel. You're the best, thank you so much for your support. Let's get right back to this list, shall we? Number 8. Arachnite. Coming at you live from Warp World, one of the most out there versions of Peter Parker hit the page in Infinity Wars issue 3. Moon Knight and Spider-Man are gearing up. They're making a game plan to take down Gamora, and Spider-Man says, just punch whoever I punch in a second. Awesome, great deal. Now that turns out to be a lot harder than imagined when the both of them merge together. Alongside Arachnite, we got to meet Ghost Panther, Soldier Supreme, Iron Hammer, and more. Now Peter's mind was also separated into 4 different personalities like Moon Knight, each desiring dominance of his body. So there's Science Pete, the Knight, of course, the friendly neighborhood Arachnid, and for when it comes to signing those checks, CEO Peter. A combination of darts and webs ought to get the job done as well. Number 7. Spider Kid. Making his first appearance in Spider-Force issue 1, Earth 218 Peter's childhood is actually a little darker, believe it or not. Both of his parents passed away in a car crash tragically, and Uncle Ben was much more different after that. He was a mean old man. He was abusive to Peter, so much so that Peter actually scrapped the family name. He started going by Charlie Parker. Charlie was a troubled kid naturally. It wasn't his fault at all, but he had to spend 2 years at the Administration for Child Services and then 2 more years at Horizon Juvenile Detention Center. Now his powers didn't arrive until he was 13 after that, and then he had to bust dealers just to get by. Charlie was recruited into the Superior Spider Army by Ashley Barton, who would call Charlie Grandpa, because of the resemblance of her grandfather Pete from her reality. I love Grandpa Pete's style. The exposed arms, gotta admit, pretty badass. Number 6, spiders, man. And now on to something a little more, I don't know, disgusting, perhaps? Spider-Man of Earth 11580 is actually Spider's man. He's made of 1,000 spiders that work together, hive mind status. So gross. See, before the incident, Peter and Gwen were visiting Horizon Labs, and instead of one spider coming down, taking a bite of Peter, he actually fell into a pit of radioactive spiders where they consumed him. But he didn't go. See, his consciousness was actually spread out within all of these thousands of spiders. So much worse, way worse, I would say. Even on the cover of Spider-Geddon issue 3, it grosses me out. You see all of them and they're great, all the different alternate Spider-Mans, and then you see him and his mask is ripped, there's spiders coming out. Like, no, I don't want your help. I want anybody's help but you. Go away. He's actually quite similar to Carl King, who came around in comics much earlier with Spider-Man's Tangled Web issue 1. Only he was a bully in Peter's class who was obsessed with getting the same powers as Spider-Man, so he ate the dead spider that initially bit Peter and then ended up in a similar conundrum. I'd rather eat the spider than be consumed by thousands of them. Everybody's turning into spiders like it's a fun thing. That's a hard pass. I'd rather just not have superpowers. Number 5, Astro Spider. Jumping on over to Earth 3145, making his first appearance in Spider-Force issue 1, John Jameson was the son of Jonah Jameson. He was an astronaut for NASA, and during one trip, a spider got trapped in his suit, which already sounds like a nightmare scenario. But when the space shuttle was then hit by cosmic waves, John obtained these amazing new abilities that all merged together. Now, he didn't come home and stop bank robbers one quip at a time. See, his Earth was actually destroyed by a thermonuclear war, so Jameson was assigned to oversee the construction of a spacecraft on the Nautilus platform. He, along with 35 others, are the last of humanity. So it's a little bit different than our, usual Earth 616 scenario. John can also read minds and create webs of solid telekinetic energy. He met his fate a few issues later when he was feasted on by Verna. Sometimes being a spider totem sucks. Number 4, the Savage Spider-Man. Less space and more savage land. This Peter Parker entered comics in Vault of Spiders issue 1. When a plane went down over Antarctica, Peter was the only survivor in his family. Now, he didn't have powers just yet, but he survived using the only remaining parachute. Tragic stuff. Now, during his rough emergency landing, the wind led him to touch down in a nest of giant spiders. And then they all just bit him non-stop until he himself gained these spider abilities, and then soon he was the new protector of Savage Land. Now later on, he was recruited into the Spider Army by Ghost Spider to fight off the Inheritors back on our Earth 616. Number 3, Hostess Cake Spider-Man. I think it's time we talk about one of the craziest versions of the webhead, and perhaps one of the yummiest, I'll say. Besides Spiders Man, it's pretty yummy too. So not only is Peter dishing out quips and flips, but he's also feeding the world. This version appeared for the first time in an ad for Hostess Twinkies, so naturally its own Marvel universe had to exist to house such a reality. And also, it's fun to talk about. So when it came down to taking on these supervillains, Spider-Man wouldn't resort to violence to get the message across. Instead, he would just huck Twinkies. He would huck fruit pies, chocolate cakes, all the treats. Just come coming at ya. It's so yummy. And funny enough, in Spider-Verse issue 1, the cakes are referred to as golden sponge cakes, you know, to avoid trademark issues, then they get sued. That's also the same issue where we see the end of said golden sponge cake Spidey. Short but sweet. Number 2, Superior Spider-Man. Starting in 2013, this version is the outcome of the Dying Wish storyline, where Dr. Octavius planted his mind inside Peter Parker's. That's right, the two ended up switching bodies like it's Freaky Friday, only with super abilities, but it's always fun. Otto Octavius was dying, and when Peter visited, he had no idea it's actually his own deathbed that he was looking at. Let me explain. So right when Otto Octavius switched into Peter's body, he discovered what it was really like to be a hero. He understood the whole with great power comes great responsibility thing. Having retained Peter's memories as well in this new skin suit, he decides to just go for it and fight crime, but he does it in a horrible way. He's not really sure how to balance the scales of justice just yet. He was violent when it came to handling these guys. Otto even enlarged the suit's talons to cause greater pain to his victims. Like, is he Jigsaw? Who does this? He modified the nano spider tracers as well that get ejected from said talons to paralyze the victims. Green Goblin and his army attacked, and then it was then that Otto Octavius realized he wasn't meant to be the sticky hero that he wanted to be. After coming to terms with the fact that Peter's consciousness still exists inside of him, he decided to sacrifice himself, allowing Peter to become the Superior Spider-Man. Number 1, Spider-Boy. Another fun amalgam making his first debut in Marvel vs. DC issue 3, residing on Earth 9602, Spider-Man mixed with DC's Superboy. I mean, I smell power. Need I say more, really? Spider-Boy is a clone. Now, he's a clone of Peter who was created during an accidental lab explosion. Now, General Ross felt responsible, so he adopted the young clone, Pete Ross and Uncle Jen. They were a fun pair until Thaddeus was taken out by a mugger. Sad stuff. So Pete now became the hero. He put together a suit, became famous almost overnight. Now, back when he returned to Project Cadmus, Pete was given a web pistol to help him swing around. And on top of that, he can increase his own personal gravity to help get things done. He can focus gravity inwards to make himself stronger and move faster, or he could lower gravity around himself in order to jump higher and further. OP, I would say you're pretty OP at that point.
Number 10, Wolverine. Wolverine is an alternate version we've really only seen briefly in Secret Wars Battle World issue number 3, but I like to imagine that she is pretty strong and also pretty cool, like many of her other amalgamated versions. Gwen is a character that we've seen become an alternate version of Spider-Man and Deadpool, and both of those characters and versions of Gwen Stacy are pretty rad, I must admit. So I imagine her Wolverine version would also be tough as nails and fierce. Wolverine also appeared on an alternate cover for Old Man Logan issue number 2 from 2015, with art done by Chris Samnee. If that art is any indication, like her other alternate versions before her, this would probably prove to be a pretty powerful and popular alternate version of Wolverine and Gwen, if, you know, we saw more stuff from her. I just want to read a comic that's about all the awesome and powerful alternate Gwen versions running around in the multiverse together. Gwen Stacy's Adventure Through the Multiverse, it could be called, and Gwen could wander around and meet all the alternate, possibly mutant, versions of herself. Maybe they're all secretly mutants. That would be kind of cool. Just like how Deadpool or Gwenpool was secretly a mutant, maybe, or retconned herself to be a mutant. I love that, it's so weird. Number 9, Poison Wolverine. Poison Wolverine is the assimilated version of Wolverine from Earth 22186, who became bonded to a poison. Poisons are basically like symbiotes, except symbiotes are kind of their own thing over at Marvel, so I guess imagine a symbiote, but it's like a different symbiotic alien race. So not a symbiote, and kind of pointy and sharpy instead. Are you with me at all? The poison that bonded to Wolverine and took him over would have his powers and would also be able to use his biomass to shapeshift and give itself extra appendages or tentacles as needed. So this is a version of Wolverine who isn't in control as much, but does still have powers, plus can also shapeshift. Sadly, this version of the character did perish, not because it was defeated per se, but because the head of its hive, the Poison Queen, was vanquished. That's how it works for the poisons. Your queen is vanquished, you're dead. Number 8, Wolverham. Although he might not seem that powerful, Wolverham of Reality 73174 might actually actually end up being one of the most powerful? He is like an alternate version of both Spider-Ham, Peter Porker, and of Wolverine. Being that he's also kinda cartoony in origins, it's likely that his powers are similar to that of both heroes, meaning that he has probably a crazy healing factor, his adamantium claws and skeleton, and can pull off all sorts of immensely powerful cartoon antics, with cartoon physics applying to his fights and his adventures. I don't know about you, but I think having cartoon physics in play makes you pretty powerful. Cartoon physics are wacky. Number 7. Old Man Logan. Old Man Logan is still a badass who manages to get a lot done despite the fact that his healing factor sometimes struggles to keep up. In his old age, his healing factor is slowed down when we first get into Logan's future adventures in the post-apocalyptic wasteland that was once Earth. However, much more later down the line, his healing factor finally picks back up again. At this time, Logan no longer goes by the name Wolverine at all and is instead known as the Hooded Man. So this version of him is kind of weaker, but also kind of the same. Either way, Old Man Logan also brings years of experience and wisdom to the table, which I think should be worth something extra when it comes to how powerful he is. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Wolverine lists or more mutant lists in general, haha, I love writing mutant lists for you, please be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up and clicking subscribe, do all the things, woo! Number 6. Diamond Patch. Diamond Patch is the version of Wolverine from Warp World, which of course was made by Gamora when using the Infinity Stones to fold the universe in half. He is the amalgamation of Emma Frost and Wolverine, making him a pretty deadly and stylish character. His claws, instead of being adamantium, are diamond, and Diamond Patch also has a sharp eye and mind for good business ventures as well, like Emma Frost. He also seems to be able to channel his telepathic powers using his claws as well. It was also implied that in the future, Diamond Patch may potentially be destined to bond with the Phoenix Force. Ho-ho! Number 5. Wolverina. Wolverina is the female version of Wolverine and cousin of Wolvie or Wolverine from the alternate Earth of 89923. She works as a waitress at her father's bar, Bud Sud, but is also a skilled fighter who is called in to replace Wolverine after he went missing. Wolverina also has leadership skills and could potentially make a good team leader if needed. More than that, while her powers are somewhat unspecified when it comes to what they are or how powerful they can be considered, Wolverina also is a self-aware comic book character, meaning that she knows she is in a comic book and can often use this knowledge to take charge of her own narrative and break the fourth wall with, reaching out to her readers. I think having that kind of power can be pretty potent in comics, which is why she makes the cut for our most powerful Part 2 list. And she didn't do too bad, she's about halfway up, so pretty impressive. Number 4. Weapon X. Weapon X comes to us from the Age of Apocalypse universe of Earth 295. Weapon X has powers similar to his Earth 616 counterpart, but his feral rages are more intense in comparison, and he initially requires Jean's assistance to calm those rages down, which was what brought the two together romantically. It would be in a fight with Cyclops when he made his way to try and save Jean Grey from Sinister that he'd lose his hand, while also taking one of Cyclops' eyes in exchange during the battle. A hand for an eye for a hand. That seems pretty fair, I guess. Weapon X would later go on, despite being maimed, to become even more powerful, possibly one of the most powerful alternate versions of the character, when he surprised everyone and ended up becoming Apocalypse's heir after his defeat and the return of the Celestials. During this time, he was known as Weapon Omega, though his newfound power would only end up being temporary. Eventually, he would have this power stripped from him by Jean and return once more to being Weapon X. Also, I think I cut off this hand, but I think it's actually this hand I think that he loses. I'm trying to remember the art. I always want to mirror everything, so that's why. I don't even know if it'll be the same for you though, because this might be mirrored for you. I don't know. How do you see it? Aren't cameras weird in the way that we see images? Isn't that all weird when you think about it? Anyways, the fact that we see images and we flip them with our eyes, and it's all freaky. Number 3. Earth 10005. This is the Wolverine that belongs to Fox's mutantverse, played by Hugh Jackman. In this reality, Wolverine was one of the strongest mutants around, being the only one that Kitty was able to send back in time in Days of Future Past, and the only one who was able to put a stop to Dark Phoenix when it had taken over Jean Grey, corrupting her in X-Men Last Stand. Due to his healing factor, Logan was able to walk right up to Jean while everyone else was pretty much getting turned to dust around him. He pressed forward, struggling to reach her, and then used the awesome power of his love for her to calm Dark Phoenix down enough for him to be able to kill her with his claws, bringing Jean back but also killing both her and the Phoenix. Really sad. That's some pretty powerful healing factor, and some pretty powerful love factor as well. Number 2. Governor General Howlett. The version of Wolverine from Earth 12025 is James Howlett, and he's not just a hero but also holds the position of Governor General to the Queen of England for Canada. For those who might not be aware, the Governor General position in Canada acts as basically the go-between for Canada and the Queen or the Crown. They act on behalf of the Crown, and a few other nations actually also have this position. Typically nations who were granted independence from the British, as opposed to having fought against the British to free themselves from British rule, have this position. James Howlett of Earth 12025 not only was known as Governor General, but he's also known for having an adamantine laced skeleton, which is actually different from adamantium, so if you thought I was saying that wrong, I'm not, it's a different thing. This, instead, is a mythical type of metal belonging to the gods. This grants James an extra layer of protection on both a mystical and godlike level, which means it's very hard to mess with James in any way. James also travels and adventures when he can with his romantic partner Hercules, which means if you mess with him, you likely also have to fight Hercules as well. Both this number and number 3 actually both have the power of love. The power of love. Number 1. Weapon Hex. Weapon Hex comes to us from Warp World, which was created by Gamora when she folded the universe in half. Doing so caused all the souls of that universe, of course, to merge together, as we talked about with Diamond Patch, creating combined beings such as Weapon Hex, who is a combination of both Laura Kinney's X-23, aka Wolverine, and Scarlet Witch. She, as such, has the combined powers of both of these heroes, making her pretty OP, possibly even more OP than Amalgam's Darkclaw, though she doesn't have quite as much plot armor most likely. Then again, with those two power sets, she wouldn't really need plot armor.